Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Barrie Redfern.
Good evening, it's 5:30. This is Update for Monday the 10th of July from Manx Radio. Tonight, claims air travel to and from the island is not worth it thanks to cancellations and delays. You can earn more yet still be eligible for public sector housing under new plans, but one councillor says it'll increase the waiting list. And 50 years on, but not forgotten, personal stories of the Summerland disaster go on record. More on those stories in Update, plus weather, traffic and travel news.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
Now, at 29 minutes to 6, the news headlines from Siobhan Fletcher. First am I.
A burglar who raided a widow's jewellery collection before selling on what he's stolen has been jailed. Kevin Paul Scott Grass of Cowles Terrace in Ramsey was told he was clearly the most dishonest of individuals during sentencing at Douglas Courthouse today. The 34-year-old was sent to prison for 31 months. You can find the full story at manxradio.com. Passengers who've been impacted by EasyJet cancellations can now rebook for a discounted rate with one of the other airlines serving the Isle of Man. Loganair has announced rescue fares following a spate of cancellations and changes to EasyJet's summer timetable. In sport, tonight's Southern 100 practice is still set to get underway despite the current bad weather battering the island. Roads are due to close at 6:05 p.m. The clerk of the course, Giles Ollie, says he's spoken to some of the riders and they would prefer to get some practicing done, even though conditions are not ideal. Further afield, police say they're assessing information supplied by the BBC over claims a male presenter paid a teenager for explicit pictures. The Metropolitan Force is now carrying out further inquiries to establish whether any crime's been committed. A teenage boy's been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following the stabbing of a teacher in Gloucestershire. Jurors in the trial of nurse Lucy Letby have been retired to consider their verdicts. And the US President Joe Biden's described relations with the UK as rock solid during talks in London with Rishi Sunak. They're your headlines. News at 6.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
And the forecast from the Ronaldsway Met Office. Outbreaks of rain will clear this evening, but with the risk of the odd shower still returning. Moderate to fresh southeast wind, veering southwest and strengthening. Maximum temperature 17 Celsius. Tomorrow will start off mainly dry and cloudy with the odd shower in the afternoon or evening. Light to moderate southwest wind and a top temperature of 18 Celsius. The outlook for Wednesday mainly dry with variable amounts of cloud, but with a risk of showers. Moderate to fresh west or southwest wind and the highest temperature 18 Celsius. Sunset this evening at 9:49. Sunrise tomorrow morning at 4:59. High water at 6:05 this evening. Low water tomorrow at 12:19 a.m. and high water at 6:35 a.m.
Visit the Manx Glass and Glazing website and see a range of products from windows to doors, mirrors to splashbacks. manxglass.com.
The risk of a flight being cancelled or delayed means air travel to and from the island is not worth it. That's from campaigner Brian Carr, who founded the EasyJet at Ronaldsway Group to enable disrupted passengers to share their experiences.
I was travelling back just after TT and they cancelled it and then they delayed it for 17 hours. And it was like, well, you're not entitled to anything because we're going to put you in a hotel. They blame ATC restrictions or Ronaldsway closing when you're entitled to claim the delay through the EU, well, now the UK 261 things. And if EasyJet refuse, I just contacted the CAA and said, look, EasyJet have refused. This is what they said. This is what I have. They then got in touch with EasyJet, and within 3 days they'd paid out the full compensation that they have to pay.
It seems to have a big impact on the Isle of Man, especially, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
especially when you've got 2 flights a day and you're looking at them both being full with 300 people, and then you're waiting 2-3 days to fly back to the island. It's not worth it. We
know, of course, DFE last spring, summertime now, undertook sort of a review of the open skies policy, and the fact we have, of course, an open skies policy and private airlines able to service from Ronaldsway here. Do you think that needs to be looked at again now that we're seeing issues from these companies?
Seriously does. I mean, I'm surprised that when Manx Airlines was sold to British Airways, that the Manx government didn't buy the routes in those days. Then we would be able to set what we want for the airlines to operate the same way as the steam packet.
Time now, 24 minutes to 6. Changes to the maximum amount of money you can earn and still be eligible for a public sector house are increasing by several £1,000s. But there are concerns there aren't enough houses as it is. And all this will do is put more people on the waiting list. Douglas councillor and chair of the Housing Committee, Devon Watson.
Simply increasing thresholds, which is something that a government department can do for free, doesn't make up for the fact that we've got a critical shortage of social housing. So this increased pressure placed on local authorities will require us to build a lot more social housing. And the hardest thing to do is, because we've got a limited stock, to say, hey, you might have to wait for a few years before you finally get a social house. So, and by that time, people might be moved off the list. So it's critical that the government works with local authorities, works with housing providers and works with charities to solve the housing crisis. To push someone out of a social housing house into the sort of wild west that is a private rental market isn't something we ever want to do. But there is already a program that reevaluates people every 5 years. If people do require the housing, they remain in that housing. And if they don't require that housing, then we work with those families to look at different options as to how we can adjust rents, how we can help them find somewhere else, or keep them within that housing if that is required. If you are someone who has an income that is suddenly included within this, it'll make it easier to get on the waiting list. If you're already on the waiting list, you might have to compete with people who've just come on. So in general, it's going to increase waiting lists, which is going to put pressure on offices, it's going to put pressure on staff, and it's going to put pressure on the people who are waiting and who desperately need a affordable home, which is why the central government needs to work with local councils to build a lot more social housing. Our housing stock has fallen as a proportion of the total housing within the city and within the island as a whole. So we need to increase those numbers to bring it back up to parity to sort of deal with the housing crisis.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Well, it's still a little bit wet today, isn't it? But today does see the start of the Southern 100. Roads around the Belawn course will close at 6:05 this evening for the practice session. Among the riders, some well-known names, including Michael Dunlop, Dean Harrison, Davy Todd and Dominic Herbertson. Beth Espy reports.
The Southern 100 is a hugely popular event in the racing calendar, which sees competitors take on the 4.25 mile Belawn course after a mass start, which has to be seen to be believed. And there is a huge interest in being part of these races, as Press and Media Liaison Officer Phil Edge explains.
I think we've got a total of 218 entries, I think, roughly. We've got 35 newcomers, which is an excellent amount and shows how keen people are to come and race at the Chorus Belawn course. We had to put an extra race on for one class, so things are looking good.
Of the 35 newcomers, there are a few Manxies, and Luke Blevins is one of them.
Sam Norton from Castletown, he's also making his Southern 100 and road racing debut, and Seb Spears, he is as well, he's from Castletown. Fortunately, I'm not massively nervous yet, but I'm sure it'll kick in, but it's just nice to know that people you know are in the same boat.
Will Birchall is another newcomer. He's from South Wales and has nothing but praise for the support he's received from the Southern 100 Club.
Brilliant. Any questions asked, they've been answered with good information, helpful and friendly. It's brilliant. I find anybody involved in racing is there because they want to see bikes on the grid and they want to see people achieve their dreams.
And Oliver Dean, a returning competitor, gives us a glimpse of what life is like for a racer preparing for an event.
Currently got 2 bikes in my house, 1 in my kitchen, 1 somewhere else. We dedicate a lot of time. If I'm not at work, I'm at the gym. If I'm not at the gym, I'm in the garage. There's no spare time now.
Known as the friendly races for a reason, whether you just want to spectate or you'd be willing to help marshal, you can guarantee you'll be made very welcome.
Well, just as I said that the racing was going to go ahead, in came a message, and it says, although the rain has eased due to standing water around the course, which is clearing, they're delaying the road closure until 1840. So not long to go, but it is delayed. And all classes will get 1 session. The schedule will be available on the website very shortly. That's their website. Thank you very much indeed. So we've got that cleared up now. Culture Vannin has released a project recording the memories of people connected to the Summerland fire. It's almost 50 years since the disaster in which 50 people died. James Franklin told Manx Radio Summerland Remembered is a collection of the personal stories of those connected with the tragedy.
I've never known to this day how I managed to get out.
The next thing was an almighty bang, and a sheet of flame shot right up the back wall and just came towards me at a hell of a fast rate.
The first thing they would have done is rung me to say, I'm okay, we're all okay. And by not hearing from them, I just knew that they weren't coming back.
Summerland Remembered is the largest oral history collecting project ever done for the Summerland fire. It's taken just about 2 years to gather in over 12 hours of first-hand accounts and what it's meant at the time and what the effect it continues to have on people's lives today. It consists of interviews with 16 people in 15 different interviews, gathering in a range of different stories of the fire, from survivors or the bereaved through to the emergency services such as firefighters, nurses or police officers, as well as just eyewitnesses, visitors, employees, or entertainers on the stage on the night. I think this project's important to collect in these first-hand accounts of the history. It's all well and good having it written down, but 50 years on, it's an incredibly important thing to capture the first-hand accounts of these stories. And many of these have never been told before because they're such difficult stories for people to tell. But gathering them now means that we can pass them on to future generations of people on the island or off or all over to learn about the tragedy and also what it means. And hopefully through that we can do better in the future. Hopefully things like this will not happen and we all continue understanding and remembering and honouring what happened back then.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
And the Ben McCree's departure from Heysham due to arrive here in Douglas at 7:15. The Manannan departed this afternoon, expected in Liverpool at 6:15. And leaving Liverpool, expected to arrive here in Douglas at 10:30. And the Ben McCree departing at 7:45 from Douglas, expected in Heysham at 11:30. And in the early hours of the morning, the Ben McCree departs from Heysham at 2:15, expected in Douglas at 6.
Follow the Steam Packet on Twitter for the latest sailing information.
And it's 16 minutes to 6. You're listening to Update, coming to you from Manx Radio. Just a reminder that the road closure for the racing is delayed now until 6:40. And the schedule will be available on our Manx Radio website very shortly. A burglar who raided a widow's jewellery collection before selling on what he'd stolen has been jailed. Tessa Hawley was at Douglas Courtout for Manx Radio.
Kevin Paul Scott Grass of Cowles Terrace in Ramsey was told he was clearly the most dishonest of individuals during sentencing today. The 34-year-old had initially denied carrying out the burglary at a property on Ballure Road in September 2021, but changed his plea before he was due to stand trial. The court heard Grass had been employed by the woman, who's in her 70s, to paint an upstairs bedroom. She'd given him a key for access while she was out. On the 17th of September, she returned home from an appointment to find 25 items of her jewellery, which held significant sentimental value, had been stolen from her bedroom. The collection, which included watches, bracelets, pendants and engagement rings belonging to family members, was said to be worth between £10,000 and £12,000. Police were called and the woman's daughter also used Facebook to appeal for help. She was contacted by someone who told her he'd bought a number of the items from Grass. Investigations later showed payments totalling more than £2,000 had been made into Grass's bank account. Some of the stolen items were later recovered, but 10 are still missing. In a victim impact statement provided to the court, the woman described the burglary as the most upsetting and traumatic experience. He left me feeling vulnerable and unsafe in my own home, she added. Grass's advocate told the court his client had issues with alcohol and drugs, adding that he'd committed the burglary after becoming aggrieved that he hadn't been paid for the decorating work he was doing. Describing Grass as having a dishonest personality, Deemster Graham Cook told him this elderly lady living alone has had her life damaged, probably indefinitely. Sending Grass to prison for 31 months, Deemster Cook added, "You are a thoroughly dishonest person."
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
And the UK and European markets close slightly higher as investors digest a surprisingly low in Chinese inflation reading and looking ahead to key US data and corporate earnings later in the week. The dollar fell and slipped against other major currencies as investors continued to price in expectations that the Federal Reserve is near the end of its tightening cycle. Oil prices dipped after weak economic data from top consumers in the United States and China, though expected crude supply cuts from Saudi Arabia and Russia limited losses. Gold was little changed as investors awaited US inflation data that could influence the Federal Reserve's policy stance. Packing and Paper Group Monday said on Monday that it's agreed to buy the Hinton Pulp Mill in Alberta, Canada, from West Fraser for $5 million.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
And at the close, the FTSE 100 is at 7,273. That's up 0.23%. The DAX is up 0.45 at 15,673. At 5 to 5, the Dow Jones was up 0.46% at 33,889. S&P 5,404, that's up 0.12. And the Nasdaq 13,668, up 0.06. The exchange rates, the pound against the US dollar 1.283 and against the euro 1.167. In the commodities market, gold is down 0.04%. That's at $1,923 and Brent is up 0.29% at 78.47.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
11 minutes to 6 now. Peel commissioners say it has concerns about the new local government amendment bill. Commissioner Alan Jones claims the government is using a piece of UK legislation which will put pressure on the island's smaller authorities.
There's two clauses in it that we have concerns about. First one is to do with the board system, where you have local authorities set up boards to run various things like amenity sites, swimming pools and things like that. We feel that there's a lack of democratic control and accountability for the boards. Feel there needs to be a proper debate with the government about how they operate and are administered, so that there is a proper accountability and democratic control over them. The other clause we're against is they're trying to take a piece of UK legislation on supplying information and things which applies in UK to the large metropolitan authorities, but doesn't apply to parish councils, which are given separate legislation. It's quite onerous for small authorities, even for Peel. Again, they haven't provided any evidence of the need for it because people can get information very easily through freedom of information. Most local authorities, including ourselves, post our minutes online. The more larger metropolitan authorities, more akin to government, yet there's no plans to introduce such a system for government to gain access to their information. And there's more evidence of the need for that than there is to show that local authorities are hiding things or not producing information when requested. And if I could also point out that it's not just Peel that's against this. There's a number of other local authorities have concerns about these clauses.
Manx Radio Sport.
And Rhiann Evans has your sports news today. First am I, Rhiann?
First am I, good afternoon. Well, away from the Island Games, the island's men's cricketers have completed a clean sweep in a bilateral competition against Austria. 53 from 28 balls by Nathan Knight and a half-century from 51 balls by Adam Macaulay enabled the home side to overtake Austria's 149 for 5 with just 4 balls to spare. Then, in the second match, a partnership of 70 between Carl Hartman and Christian Webster saw the Manx soar past the Austrian total of 137 all out. Elsewhere, and local hockey star Sienna Dunn is competing in the EHF Euro Hockey Under-18s tournament this week. The competition got underway this morning. England's opener was against the Netherlands, which saw Sienna captain the England side. Unfortunately, they lost narrowly by just 1 goal in what was a very tight match. The England Under-18 squad next take on Austria tomorrow at 11 a.m. And in athletics, Rachel Franklin has come 9th in the 5,000 metre British Championships. There's no rest for the wicked though. She'll soon be on a plane heading over to Guernsey to compete in the Island Games.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
And at Ronaldsway, let's have a look at the flights now. And the 18:15 to Liverpool, that's delayed until 7:15. And the other flights, London Gatwick, Liverpool, Manchester, they are on time. And regarding the arrivals, the 17:45 from Manchester, that's delayed until 7:15. And the London City, scheduled for 8:10, that is now delayed. Sorry, I haven't got a time for that, but it is delayed. That's the 8:10. So on to the roadworks now. And by the way, you can catch up with all the roadworks details on the Manx Radio website. That's manxradio.com. Go to news and click on travel. And a reminder also that the Southern 100 the racing is delayed slightly, be going ahead I think in about 40 minutes time. So a reminder about those road closures tomorrow and Wednesday 6:05 until 9:40 p.m. and on Thursday from 9:30 a.m. to 12:45 and 1:30 to 4:45. In Onchan until the 14th, the Pagoda Road and the Cregnabar Back Road will be closed for resurfacing, 9:30 to 3:30 each day. Temporary lights on Eskdale Road, 24 hours a day for work on the pavements. And the Groudle Road is closed between Harbour Road and Fairway Close for gas upgrade work. A couple more. Douglas, the Tremode Road is closed for excavation work, and temporary lights on Victoria Road at the Falconcliff Terrace Junction. And that is the travel news.
H&H Motorcycles.im for all your motorcycle requirements. Southgate Industrial Estate, opposite Quayside Tyres. Call 665646.
It's been another thrilling day of action for Team Isle of Man at the Island Games in Guernsey. Rob Pritchard is there for us.
After 6 medals yesterday, it's now up to 8 for the Isle of Man, who took 2 more medals in the shooting competitions this afternoon. Catherine Holden and Blee Richardson took bronze in the women's 10-metre air pistol, and Martin Neen took 3rd place in the men's individual sport trap competition. Elsewhere, it was a good morning for women's sport in general, with the Manx football team beating the Isle of Wight 5-0 and the Manx basketball team beating the Faroe Islands 45-19. After his triathlon bronze yesterday, Will Draper recorded a top 10 finish in the cycling time trial today. The combined times of the 5 Manx cyclists meant they finished 5th in the team event. I've been speaking to Mark Hosthouse and Niall Quiggin.
I think a lot of it was just being maybe a little bit braver in some of the corners and things like that. But yeah, to be honest, I'm really pleased with what I did out there. I don't think I could have gone any faster. I felt broken at the end in a time trial. That's how it should always be.
Oh, it's always good to get the first race out of the way. I think the boys were better suited for the road race and the crit, I think, than the time trial. So flush your legs out, have a look at the competitors. We'll spend tomorrow wrecking the road race. So I think we're confident to get individual on the box and even a team medal.
It was bad news for Ryan Chin in the men's tennis singles, as he was knocked out 6-love, 6-1 by a Cayman Islands athlete. And the Manx table tennis team had their first win of the games today, beating the Falklands 6-1 in the team event. In the swimming pool, Peter Allen, Laura Kinley, Ciara Prentice, Alex Turnbull and the men's and women's relay teams secure places in the finals of their respective events. Their finals take place tonight from 6 p.m. Also this evening, Team Isle of Man are in action in the athletics, with Manx athletes in the men's 10,000 metres, the javelin and the men's 100 metres.
And that's it for this evening. From today's update team, newsreader Siobhan Fletcher, producer Rian Evans, and myself, Barrie Redfern. It's a very good evening, but a reminder that you can never miss an edition of Update. Why don't you subscribe to the Update podcast and keep yourself right up to date? Coming up after the news, agenda with Lewis Foster, then at 6:30, Ellie Miller will be here with more greatest hits. 9 o'clock, time for Brass with Ian Cottier, and rounding off the evening, After Hours with Dave Moore. From all of us here, good evening.